What is going on, YouTube? So coming back today with my Atlanta Hawks basketball preview for 2016. Hopefully, as you guys can tell, feeling a little bit better now. Like I said, I've been dealing with a little bit of strep throat and fever this week, and then just nasty hangover earlier this week. Finally starting to get over it, so hopefully my voice sounds better. Anyway, Atlanta Hawks basketball preview for 2016-2017. So start with the first of my two X factors, which is the transition from Jeff Teague and Al Horford to Dennis Schroder and Dwight Howard. This one comes with kind of an asterisk because Dennis Schroder really started getting more of the minutes toward the end of last season, really after the All-Star break. I'd say Schroder was the starting point guard. So it's not a transition that's going to be brand new to them. It's one that they've already started to undergo, which is good. Schroder I think it was time for him to be the starting point guard for that team anyway. But the transition from Al Horford to Dwight Howard is yet to be seen. I mean, obviously, if you get the Orlando Magic Dwight Howard, then it's a great transition. But if you get the slowly regressing Dwight Howard of the last 2-3 years, then probably not so good. Anyway, next X factor. Now, again, it's a little bit hard to come up with X factors for the Hawks because it really seems like they've kind of maximized what they have. To some degree, that's kind of true in my mind, but it's hard work down low and rebounding. It's just overall work ethic. You know, when you look at their per-game stats, like team stats last year, they're a pretty efficient team. You know, they outshot their opponents by about 10%? 5%? What do we got here? Field goal percentage. Yeah, I mean about 5%? I can't. Anyway, they shot around 46% compared to their opponents' 43%. I'm reading it the wrong way. So yes, by about 3%. So their defense has been solid, I feel like, the last couple of years. Maybe not the best of the NBA, but you know, they've been good on that end of the floor, especially between Paul Millsap and Al Horford. Now, really the only stat category that they got really outdone in is rebounding, especially on the offensive boards. I think that's something that can get fixed if Dwight Howard really gets back to his old roots and starts hitting the glass real hard. Paul Millsap, another guy that can be a solid rebounder. But, you know, really after that, their depth in the front court isn't that great, which I think can contribute to some of their lack of rebounding when you start getting into the bench. Really, all they have when it comes to reserves for the front court is Chris Humphries and Tiago Splitter. But anyway, let's get into the key players. First one is Dennis Schroder. So, I already talked about him a little bit earlier. It's pretty much his point guard spot for the taking now. 22 years old, it looks like he's ready to finally make that push to become one of the better point guards in the NBA. I think he'll be able to do it. Now, let's see if this page will load. Per game stats, decent last year. I mean, this is a guy that really didn't play that much. Like I said, up until, the All-Star break? That's when he really started to, play a lot more minutes. Last year, he averaged about, 11 points per game? Yeah, around 11 points per game. And 20.3 minutes, he really didn't get that many minutes at the beginning of the year because of Jeff Teague. Coming toward the end of the season, started to get more. Like I said, it's a transition that really started to undergo at the end of the season. Guy that also averaged around 4.3 assists per game and shot around 42% from the field. So, again, you hope for improvements for next year. We'll see what happens when he's finally thrust into that starter role for good. Next key player, Dwight Howard. I mentioned him a little bit earlier. This is a guy that's been, a 15-10 player around that. For the last couple of years, he's been in the league. And like I said, been slowly regressing really for the last 5 years ever since he left Orlando. He's 30 years old. He's talked about a lot this offseason about how he has gotten a lot better. How he's working on his free throws, rebounding, just overall, I guess, basketball skill. Like, he averaged 13.75 points per game last year, around 12 rebounds per game. You know, his rebounding did get up from the previous season, which is good, but his scoring has regressed at a pretty alarming rate from 20.6 points, actually 22.87 points per game was his career high in 2011, or 2010, 2011, down to 13.75 points per game last season. And he was able to play 71 games. So at least he was able to play almost a full season last year, so I guess if anything, there's that. Third key player is Paul Millsap, and I think the best player overall on this team. I believe he is a free agent for this coming season, so we'll see what happens there. There's been a few trade rumors surrounding Paul Millsap this offseason. I don't think he's going to end up getting traded this offseason. I mentioned it before. I think he will be gone at the end of next season, though. I think he's ready to move on. I think maybe both parties are. Get a look somewhere else. So, again, guy that's been extremely effective for the Hawks the last couple of years, really ever since he went to Atlanta back in 2013. So, again, I feel like he's just got to continue what he's been doing. You know, he had, I believe, a career high in rebounds last year with around 9 rebounds per game. Also had a good year scoring with 17.1 points per game. So, see if he can continue that. Record last season, 48-34. Worst case scenario for me for the Hawks is they miss playoffs as a 10 seed. I do still like this Hawks team this year. I still think they got a very talented team. And actually in the backcourt, they got quite a bit of depth. Best case scenario, I think, is an Eastern Conference loss as a 3rd seed, like finally getting over that hump. Last year it was just the Cavs for them. They just couldn't beat the Cavs. Not able to get past the Celtics in the first round last year either. But overall record prediction for me is 44-38. I see this Hawks team as a 6 or 7 seed this year, getting into the playoffs. Maybe as that last team into the playoffs that, you know, I really think up to this point I've covered almost. Let me look back for a second, see if I still have any previews to do of any teams in the East I still think are going to make it. You know, maybe, you know, the Hornets and the Wizards might be vying for an 8th seed. But overall, I think this is the last team that I have that's getting into the playoffs in the East. So, like I said, I think they're going to regress a little bit in the record. I think the transition from Al Horford to Dwight Howard really is a little bit downhill, but I do think the fact that they were still able to pick up Dwight Howard helps out. I do like I said, I do really like their depth in the backcourt, especially at the 3 spot. They have unbelievable depth at the 3 spot between DeAndre Bembry, Torrey Prince, 2 of their first-round picks, both rookies that I think I'll really like, and then Thabo Sefolosha, Kent Bazemore obviously starting, and then you got Tim Hardaway and Jarrett Jack backing up the 2 and the 1 spot in the backcourt. So, like I said, a lot of depth to be excited about in the backcourt, and I see another year of the Hawks making the playoffs at least. But anyway, that's pretty much it. See ya.